So last time we were talking about video effects and video transitions. Now there's one more thing we want to show you how to do when working with video, and that is how to correct color or how to adjust color. And this happens, well, probably way too often in all honesty, because it's not uncommon to go out on a shoot, forget to white balance, and then come back and realize that your video is the wrong color. A lot like this video here. Hopefully you can see that this video that we're working with on the timeline is a little too blue, okay? But it is pretty easy to correct. Now, you remember in the beginning of the semester when we talked about white balancing, we said that the reason we white balance the camera before we start to shoot is so that all the colors will end up being the proper color in the video. And we talked about how a camera only sees three colors: red, green, and blue. And the white balancing process just simply allows the camera to take the proper amount of red tones, blue tones, and green tones and mix those together so that we do end up with the proper colors throughout the entire video. And if we do end up with video that's a little bit off, well, here's how we fix it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here to this toolbar at the top here of Adobe Premiere, and I'm going to click on Color. And that opens up this window over here for me and gives me several choices. But I'm actually going to select the first choice, which is Color Correction. And I am about to show you guys the easiest, the most simple, down and dirty way to correct color that can be done in Adobe Premiere. So here we go. Again, basic correction. I'm going to click on it. And what I want is I want to be able to see the choices that I have here. So next to basic correction, there's this little box off to the side. I'm going to click on it. I'm going to check it, and that's going to open up now these different options that I have, making sure that I am actually on my video here, okay? So I want to make sure that my video is appearing up here in my program screen. So I have to click on the video. All right, so my video is up. I've got my basic correction open. I've checked the box. I now can choose from these selections. And we're going to come back to some of these, and I'm going to show you exactly how they work. But for right now, I'm just going to focus on this selection where it says WB Selector. And I find that under White Balance, okay? So WB White Balance Selector, and there is this little eyedropper here, and that's what I'm going to use to actually take my white balance. In essence, I'm going to white balance the video now after it's been shot instead of doing it with the camera before it was shot. So just like when I do a white balance in the camera, I need to find something white. Well, I need to do the same thing here, and I've got a couple of choices. These two guys are wearing white shirts, and then, well, back here there's a white truck in the background, so I can go with any of those. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my eyedropper and I'm going to come over and I'm actually going to click on this guy's white shirt right here. And when I do that, Adobe is going to actually white balance this video. So watch what happens. As again, I bring the eyedropper over, I click, and wow. See the difference? Yeah, okay, it's pretty drastic. But there you go. That, again, the simplest, easiest, most down and dirty way to do any color correction that you want to in Adobe Premiere. But you can do a lot more than that, and I just wanted to show you some of the things that you could do, all right? So while we're here, and while we are under this basic correction area or category, you see all of these other options that are available to you. And some of these could come in very handy, actually. And matter of fact, when we were talking about video effects and video transitions, some of these could even be applied to those when you think about it in terms of the actual video. So it doesn't necessarily have to be dealing with white balance. That's the point I guess I'm trying to make here. Some of these other options have nothing to do necessarily with white balancing. Like, for example, this one here is contrast. Well, everybody's familiar with what contrast is, right? It's darkening or brightening the video, and I can do that here with my contrast button. So that, again, has nothing to do with white balancing, but it will help in terms of adding a little bit more contrast, a little bit more darkness, or a little bit more brightness to the shot. Same thing with the exposure. You can think of the exposure as brightening. There, of course, I just went the other way. I darkened it completely, but I can brighten it up just by going in the other direction. So you can think of exposure as brightness, and then contrast by adding just a little bit of darkness to it to get that perfect contrast that you're looking for. Right now I'm looking for the center here. I'm looking for 0.00. There it is. So I'm back to normal. But then there are a couple of other selections that you can go to. One is highlights, one is shadows, and then there's whites and blacks. I'm going to talk about the highlights and the shadows, but I'm actually going to do it from a different location as opposed to under the basic correction. So for right now, I'm going to close out my basic correction. And I did want to show you, before I do, I did want to show you this. Again, remember we said that there's this little box to the right of basic correction, and right now it's checked. So when it's checked, you can see the corrections that have been made. Well, if I click it and click it off, I go back to my original video. So I can see exactly the blue video, click it, and I can see the corrections that were made. So the good and the bad, the good and the bad. So that just gives you a way to, again, go back and look at what you originally had and see what you now have after making any basic corrections. So I'm going to click on basic corrections again to close it out. And I'm going to go back to some of these other options that we have. And I'm going to start with this one here. This one is color wheels and match. All right. And now what I'm going to get into here, as I click on that, you'll see the color wheels that appear. What I'm getting into now is working with certain tones and certain areas of the video. When we did the white balance, it affected the entire video, right? Okay, now I can actually go in and I can start to play with the color of certain areas of the video if I so choose. And what you have is you have your three color wheels here. One is shadows, one is midtones, and one is highlights, okay? So let me make sure you understand this, just so you know what we're adjusting. If we are adjusting shadows, all right, shadows, think of shadows. And when you think of a shadow, what do you think of? Something dark, right? Well, that's exactly what it is. Shadows refers to the darkest portions of the video, okay? It refers to the darkest portions of the video. So I can use this shadows wheel and I can start to adjust the color in the darker areas of the video. Let me show you what I mean here. The grass, okay? The grass is a darker area in the video, all right? So if I wanted to make that grass a little greener, I could add some green to it. And all I would do is I would come over here, back to my shadows wheel, right? Right here. And you can see that it's got colors all the way around the outside, colored ring, red, green, and blue. So I'm just going to click on the green a little bit. And when I do that, whoa, okay, that's a little bit too much. All right. But no problem, because I can go back and I can again adjust it to the kind of the default setting as to where it was in the middle. But if I click green again, maybe not so much green though this time, if I click just a little bit of green this time, you can see that the grass does start to get greener. Well, of course, all the other darker spots in the video also get greener, but that's the whole idea. You can adjust those shadow areas, or you can adjust those darker areas of the video by adding whichever color you so choose, red, green, or blue. And again, if I add just a little bit of green, I think, yeah, there we go. That's a little bit more realistic in terms of just making the grass greener. But of course, it does. You can still see that it does add a green overtone pretty much to all the darker areas or all the shadow areas of a video. So shadows is for those dark areas if you want to work on those. And then if you want to work on your highlights, that's the opposite of the shadows. So if shadows is dark, highlights is bright, right? And again, let's take something bright. Again, maybe the shirt here, the sky's a little bit brighter in terms of some of the tones in this video. But let's just play with it again. This time I'll click on the red and we'll see what it does. And yeah, you can see now a little bit. It took a it added a little bit of red here. Where you can really tell actually is back on the buildings, right? Let's go back to the default setting here for just a moment. And those buildings again are highlights. They're a little lighter. You know, they're lighter obviously than some of the other areas in the video. So let me just go back and click on that red again and watch what it does. If we highlight some of the lighter portions in the video, like the building, and you can see, yeah, that definitely put some color into those bricks, okay? And you can see it made everything here a little bit more saturated, a little bit more rich, if you will, in terms of the color. So again, that's just another thing you can do. So you can use shadows, right, to put in color in some of the lighter area, or excuse me, shadows to put color into some of the darker areas of the video, and you can use highlights to put color into some of the lighter portions of the video. And then what about in between? Well, that's your midtones, okay? If it's not the real dark portion, if it's not the real light portion of the video in terms of tone, well, then let's go with the midtones, and we can do something with those. And I think in this case, I'm probably just going to look at this right here. Looks like a pylon in the corner here, right? I'm going to consider that kind of a midtone, not too bright, not too dark. And what I'm going to do is just click on blue this time and see what that does. And again, I don't want a lot of blue. I don't want it to be very saturated. I just want to add a little bit like that, and you can see what it does. It brings that bluish tint back, obviously, that bluish tint that we originally got rid of. But again, you can see that it is doing it in certain areas that are a little bit more in between, more medium tone, as opposed to bright or dark. And if I hit the blue again, yes, it's starting to darken up some of those areas. So I'll just go back to the default setting here in the middle. But if there were certain aspects or certain portions of the video that I wanted to try to actually add a little bit color to, I would just simply determine if it was a shadow that I needed, in the case of it being darker portions or darker tones of the video, or if it would be a highlight that I needed for lighter tones, or if it were a mid-tone adjustment that I needed to make if it were more medium or neutral in terms of the tone of the video. So that's how you can use your color wheels for that. And again, it will basically just work on certain areas of the video for you. Now, I also have another option here that says curves, okay? And with the curves, if I click on it, now you can see I've got white, red, green, and blue. And this is kind of interesting because this will allow me to work, again, on sections, not light or dark or medium tones, but just on sections or portions of the video itself. Here's what I'm talking about. If I were to click just on the red, for example, okay, it turns my line red. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be adding some red. Well, say I wanted to add some red just in the center of the video, okay? Well, let me do that. I'm going to click here, and I'm going to create a little dot on my red line, and then I'm going to click up here, and I'm going to create another dot on my red line, very much like the pen tool that we use for editing audio. Remember that? Okay, this is basically the same concept. So now what I can do is I can take this middle section of the line and I can raise the amount of red in it, and you can see how it is kind of, well, it is basically making everything red pretty much in the middle, whereas the outlying areas, not so much. Let me make it a little bit more narrow, and I think that'll make a better example for us. So I'm going to add a couple of more dots. Actually, I'm going to add several more dots. Okay, now I'm just going to take this portion here, and I'm going to bring it up. Okay, and you can start to see how gradually I can start to add red to that middle portion, or that middle area, right? And based on where we are, that this first, that was a little bit too much is what that was. Let me bring that one back down. What I was trying to illustrate here was that, again, the building in the back, the brick building in the back, starts to get a little bit more, well, again, it got away from me, starts to get a little bit more red as I slowly increase that red line. So I'm working basically on just the center portion here of the video, and you can see the outer portion's not affected quite as much. So the curves will give you that opportunity, and again, they're the RGB curves. So you come under curves and then select RGB curves, and you can do red, or you can do green, or you can do blue. You can add whatever you'd like. Even more white, if you so choose, can be added just by using those curved lines. But I think, for the most part, I think what you'll end up working with most often will be the wheels, okay? Don't forget about the white balance selector. Again, that's the easiest way, the simplest way to actually white balance the entire video. But if there's portions of the video that you want to work on, you're going to end up working primarily with your wheels. And then if you needed to, you could also go to your curves to work on certain segments of the video. So hopefully that makes sense. And you're thinking, boy, I'd really like to try that. Well, you can. Yeah, you can. Go to Canvas, go to Files, and you will see a folder that says Practice Clips. And inside that Practice Clips folder, right here, you got that clip right there, the one that we just used. And you can actually work with it just like we did. So again, Files, right? And go into Practice Clips folder, and you'll find this clip, and you can take it and actually play with it just like we did. So as I said, I think I said in one of the emails I sent that, I said that it's great to be able to watch this stuff being demonstrated, but the most effective way to do it is to actually do it with hands-on experience. So hopefully you'll play around a little bit. Hopefully you will go to Files. Hopefully you will go to that Practice Clips folder, and hopefully you will download this clip and start to play with it and see what you can do in terms of color balancing. Okay? Just one other thing real quickly, just so you know. I'm not sure how much you'll actually utilize it, but up here in my source window, another option I have in my source window is Lumetri Scope, and that's this, okay? And it kind of looks rather psychedelic, doesn't it? But what this is, it's a visual representation of the amount of, well, in this case, the amount of red, blue, and green that we have in the actual photo itself, or in the actual video itself. And notice, if you would, how there's these right in the middle, right in the center here, right? There's these green, solid green lines, solid blue lines, and, well, some spattered red. But that's what you basically want to see. Again, this is just a visual representation. It's actually a scale that starts at 0 down here at the bottom, and 0 actually represents the black, the amount of black. It goes all the way to 255 at the top, and of course if 0 is black, you know that 255 is white. Okay, so this is completely dark and this is completely white, and then you're looking for the happy medium in between. And right now that looks pretty good. Again, we do have primarily that green, that solid green, that solid blue, and the amount of red as well. And then all three of the colors kind of mixed together down here. So basically when you look at this, that's what you're looking for. Now, just for fun, let me go back to this basic color, or basic correction rather, and let me unclick, and we'll go back to when it was too blue. All right, so here we go. This is the corrected version, and that's the old version, and now look what this did. See, it shot the blue level all the way up. So that's a clear visual indication that you've got too much blue in your shot, okay? You want it to look more balanced. You want it to look more like that, again, with everything toward the middle as it is here. The green, the blue, and then just a little bit of a red. But it's all pretty much concentrated in the center of the scope, and that's ideally what you want to try to go for. Okay, so if you like a visual indicator, you can use the Lumetri scopes. But other than that, that's kind of a quick overview on color correction, and hopefully you won't even have to use it, because hopefully you'll remember to white balance before you start to shoot. But if you don't, this is how to fix it.